Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Welcome to the program. Now on tonight's headlines.
We are 1 minute. Perseverance is now slowed to...
After 7 months in space, NASA's Perseverance rover overcomes a tense landing phase with a series of perfectly executed maneuvers to gently float down to the Martian soil and embark on its mission to search for signs of microbial life.
A deadly winter storm or winter weather system that brought record-busting cold to the southern and central United States, knocking out power for millions in oil-rich Texas, blankets the East Coast in snow, disrupting coronavirus vaccinations.
And global pressure against Myanmar's generals swell, with Britain and Canada imposing sanctions, though the military shows no sign of deviating its efforts to crush opposition to its coup. First to Myanmar, where a young protester died more than a week after being shot in anti-coup demonstrations, offering a fresh source of anger inside the country as international pressure grows on the generals who seized power. The sister of a young protester who died Friday called on fellow citizens to join the protest to defeat the junta. Much of the country has been in open revolt since troops deposed civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi on February 1, with desperate strands of Myanmar society uniting to protest against a return to military rule. Security forces have steadily stepped up the show and use of force by deploying troops against peaceful protesters and firing tear gas, water cannon, and rubber bullets. A rally on February 9 in Myanmar's capital, Naypyidaw, turned violent when police fired rubber bullets at demonstrators, though doctors at the hospital later said that at least 2 people had been critically wounded by live rounds. Mia Tweti Kaing, who turned 20 last Thursday as she lay unconscious in a hospital bed, was shot in the head. Military spokesman turned Deputy Information Minister Zhao Mintun confirmed this week that she had been shot and said authorities will continue to investigate the case. Since she was shot, Mia Twait Kang has become a symbol of resistance for protesters who have wielded massive banners portraying her likeness during demonstrations calling for justice.
In a related news, Myanmar's generals came under increased diplomatic pressure Thursday over the coup that deposed Aung San Suu Kyi, as India joined the United States and other countries in calling for a restoration of democracy, and Britain and Canada announced sanctions against the junta. As the ruling generals pressed on with a drive to stymie nationwide opposition, Myanmar's giant neighbor India called in a joint statement along with the United States, Japan and Australia, all members of the so-called Quad Alliance, for strengthening democracy in Asia and reversing the coup. India said that External Affairs Minister Subramanyam Jaishankar emphasized upholding of rule of law and the democratic transition in Myanmar. Washington was the first to enact concrete action, announcing targeted sanctions last week against Myanmar's generals by cutting off their access to $1 billion in funds in the United States. Former colonial power Britain said Thursday that 3 generals, Defense Minister Miatun O, Home Affairs Minister So Tut, and his deputy Tan Lang will be sanctioned for serious human rights violations following the coup. Canada in turn sanctioned 9 Myanmar military officials and accused the junta of engaging in a systemic campaign of repression through coercive legislative measures and use of force.
Meanwhile, Texas Governor Greg Abbott told a press conference reforming ERCOT, the state's main electric grid operator, is now a priority as blackouts have left millions of Texans without power amid a winter storm. Take a look.
Tonight, we have already begun the process to make sure that events like this never again happen in Texas. And that starts with reforming the agency in charge of electric reliability in Texas, which is ERCOT. So as of this press conference right now, there are no outages of power across the state of Texas because of lack of generation or lack of the ability to generate power. That said, I also want to be clear with Texans because you need to know. There will be more cold temperatures in various regions across the state of Texas tonight. ERCOT will continue to work to manage the power to ensure that power will not go down in residential areas across the state, but we still have to deal with the uncertainty of what is going on at the power generation facilities. We are organizing efforts to help Texans who are challenged by broken water pipes. Along those lines, today, I am making a formal request of the President for a major disaster declaration. If granted, this will give Texans the ability to apply for individual assistance from FEMA.
Across Texas, which has been hardest hit by the cold snap, utility companies were gradually restoring power, though more than 350,000 homes and businesses remained without electricity late Thursday afternoon, according to PowerOutage.us. Texas power companies implemented rolling blackouts to avoid grids being overloaded as residents cranked up the heat. The surge in demand came as generating capacity dropped thanks to power stations and wind turbines freezing. Even though the Arctic air mass was beginning to loosen its grip in Texas and elsewhere in the south, the National Weather Service said frigid temperatures would continue.
Meanwhile, a Texas resident tells of her personal account and misery during this winter weather crisis in Texas. Here's Alice Barasi, who lives in Humboldt, Texas. Let's watch this.
Good morning po. This is Sister Alice from local of Humboldt, Texas, District of Texas. Afternoon and then the power went out po Monday morning in our place po around 2 o'clock in the morning. So it lasted po, the power was out for more than a day. It came back in our place last Tuesday night po. So we didn't expect po that will happen. So we are caught unprepared because of the power outage. We have no heater in the house. And the worst po is the water supply. Most of them, the pipes burst, even though most of us covered our water pipes, but still po, because of the freezing temperature, it burst, and the water pressure was too low. So for the past 2 days, we got an advisory from the governor that we have to boil our water, drinking water. So far we have some drinking water that we bought. Most of the stores were closed. Even small restaurants like McDonald's, they were closed po. So people who do not have gas supply in their house, that's very difficult because they cannot cook their food. At least for us po, we have gas stove, so we were able to cook our food. And most of us, our fireplace, we haven't used that po for 12 to 15 years because we never had this kind of weather po in Texas. And I just heard po this morning in the news the reason why there's a a longer power outage was the infrastructure of Texas, the power lines and everything. They're not built for this kind of weather. That's why it happened. So the Arctic cold weather will stay for another 2 nights po. Our power is still on and off at home. We live in the northern part of Houston. At least our water supply is back po. So we were able to take a shower. And of course, with the heater, for last Monday night po, it was really, really bad. The temperature was really, really cold, and even inside our house, and with no power, we're just using candle lights, flashlights, and our chargers didn't last long because we didn't expect that the power outage will be that long, and it's more than 24 hours that we don't have any power. So I think the snowstorm is heading towards East Coast right now po, and get a stock of food and water that you need po. Right now it's still cold. It's the wind chill, I think is right now the temperature po here is like in the 30s, and the wind chill most probably is in for 1 digit. We're not used to this weather po, and most of the I just saw it in Facebook po. Some brethren, they got affected of the busted pipes in their house. So what happened is it flooded their house, the ceiling, the sheetrock fell. So, there's a lot of things that we need to do po. So far in our house, we're good po. It's just the pipe outside our house got busted, but we're able to fix it. So that's the update po that I can give you po. We keep on praying po that everybody will be safe. Me and my family are continuing our devotional prayer so that we can all get through this po. And thank you very much po to the church administration for always thinking of us po.
Now, a weather disturbance O-ring was downgraded into a tropical storm and is moving westward at 15 kilometers per hour. We have on the line Pagasa weather forecaster Lori De La Cruz for more details. Lori.
To all the viewers and our listeners. Right now, tropical cyclone wind signal number 1 is raised over southern Leyte, the southeastern portion of eastern Samar, Dinagat Islands, Surigao del Norte, Surigao del Sur, Agusan del Norte, Agusan del Sur, Davao Oriental, Davao de Oro, Davao del Norte, Davao City, Camiguin, the western portion of Misamis Oriental, and the western portion of Bukidnon. It was estimated, based on all available data, at 405 kilometers east-southeast of Hinatuan, Surigao del Sur, with maximum sustained winds of 85 kilometers per hour near the center. Its gustiness is up to 105 kilometers per hour. It is now moving westward at speed of 15 kilometers per hour. The Public and Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council concerned are advised to take appropriate actions and watch for the next severe weather bulletin to be issued at 11 p.m. today. That's the latest from Pagasa. This is Lori De La Cruz.
Ms. Lori, just a quick question. The storm actually weakened, but is there, or what is the likeliness of this storm intensifying again before making landfall?
As of our latest analysis, we're not ruling out the possibility of further intensifying or re-intensifying prior to landfall. So we're not ruling it out.
Okay, the areas that you mentioned, most of them are coastal areas. Would you know if there have been evacuations in these areas?
At the moment, we don't have further knowledge of that. However, NDRRMC, I think, if I'm not mistaken, NDRRMC is also are the ones or the agency concerned at that at that
At those areas
certain,
right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Ms. Lori, for your updates, and we are all praying that it will not intensify anymore as it makes landfall. Thank you so much again to you there at Pagasa.
Okay, back to the U.S. Take a look at these photographs showing some of the 141 sea turtles that were rescued from the frigid waters in the Brownsville Ship Channel. Let's take a look. Now, this is the rescue mission, which took place on Tuesday. It was conducted as a winter storm was sweeping across the southern United States. In extreme cold weather, sea turtles become lethargic and are unable to swim. So when sea turtles become cold stunned after being exposed to the cold water for long periods, it can result in hypothermic reactions, and that can lead to death. So South Padre Island has been in the 40s this week, making it too cold for the turtles, according to NBC News. And according to the National Park Service, cold-stunned turtles are not able to move well. So they become, as I said, lethargic. They often float to the surface or wash up on shore. This can lead to death from shock or predation or from boat strikes.
A deadly winter weather system that brought a record-busting cold to the southern and central United States, knocking out power for millions in oil-rich Texas, pushed up the East Coast Thursday as heavy snowfall and icy buildups disrupted coronavirus vaccinations. The National Weather Service, or the NWS, said a major winter storm would impact an area stretching from Virginia up to the northeast, bringing treacherous travel conditions. Snow fell steadily across New York City throughout the morning, forcing the cancellation of hundreds of flights and delaying the opening of 2 COVID-19 vaccination sites after the storm disrupted dosage delivery. Forecasters predicted up to 5 inches of snow for the Big Apple, which has already been blanketed by the white stuff twice this winter during 2 separate storms. A weather warning was in effect in New Jersey, where Governor Phil Murphy announced the temporary closure of several vaccination sites.
To Asia now, Southeast Asia. Indonesia's Mount Merapi, one of the world's most active volcanoes, erupted today, belching out fiery red lava. The volcano, close to Indonesia's cultural capital Yogyakarta on Java Island, had already spewed lava almost 24 times over the 2 last days and caused hundreds of minor volcanic quakes, according to a report by Indonesia's geological agency. Nearby residents were told to avoid the area within a 5-kilometer radius of the crater and were warned about the lava as well as airborne volcanic material. Last month, the volcano spewed huge clouds of smoke and ash that billowed down its sides. Mount Merapi's last major eruption in 2010 killed more than 300 people and forced the evacuation of around 280,000 residents from surrounding areas. That was its most powerful eruption since 1930, when around 1,300 people were killed, while another explosion in 1994 took about 60 lives. The Southeast Asian archipelago nation has nearly 130 active volcanoes.
On February 22nd, New Zealand will mark the 10th anniversary of the Christchurch earthquake, which claimed 185 lives. Following the trembler and the thousands of aftershocks that kept residents on edge for the next 12 months came an ambitious but slow rebuild. This video compares devastating aftermath scenes from Christchurch in 2011 with present-day images. The results were devastating. Office buildings crumpled, jagged fissures opened up on busy roads, and shop awnings collapsed onto pedestrians who moments before had been enjoying a lunchtime stroll. Vast swathes of the suburbs became a quagmire as a liquefaction generated quicksand undermined the ground that thousands of homes were built on. Most fatalities were in the CTV building, a 6-story 1980s-era office block that pancaked within 20 seconds of the quake hitting, then burst into flames. A total of 115 died in that structure alone, including 65 foreign students, mostly from China and Japan. Not even the horror of the Christchurch mosque attacks in 2019 or March 2019, when a white supremacist gunman killed 51 Muslim worshippers, could derail the city's revival.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Back to the news. The World Health Organization urged COVID-19 vaccine manufacturers to make good on their commitments as the planet's poorest countries await their first doses. WHO Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said the COVAX facility, the global COVID-19 vaccine procurement and distribution effort ensuring poorer countries can access doses, was now ready to begin.
And I have been encouraged. Over to you, Dr. If people everywhere demand vaccine equity, it can be done. At the beginning of the year, I issued a call to action to ensure that vaccination of health workers was underway in all countries within the first 100 days of the year. Tomorrow marks the halfway point, and we have made progress, but we are not there yet. With the emergency use listing of 2 versions of the AstraZeneca vaccine this week, COVAX is ready to roll out vaccines and is waiting for several manufacturers to make good on their commitments. The world is moving closer to delivering the promise of vaccine equity. Vaccine equity will be on the agenda at both the G7 leaders meeting and the Munich Security Conference tomorrow. Tomorrow, WHO will also launch a new declaration focused on vaccine equity, and I have been encouraged by the support we have received from hundreds of organizations and thousands of people.
Our history as people is littered with instances of destructive behavior, disrespectful dominance, imbalances, and other forms of man's inhumanity to man. But on this rare occasion, when we are all yoked to an invisible destroyer, it is my hope and plea that when the journal of this experience is written, it would deviate from what is mostly the norm and record that on this occasion, the rich took care of the poor, and the small and impecunious were not trampled with disdain by those who could have done so simply because they had the wherewithal to do it. All we ask as members of the family of nations is that we not be forgotten, ignored, or worse, taken advantage of in this business of life and death.
On Monday, the WHO gave the seal of approval to the AstraZeneca vaccine being manufactured in plants in India and South Korea, meaning it can now be shipped out via COVAX. The facility is set to issue its final distribution list for the first wave of deliveries next week. And the first doses will be delivered by the end of February, with the bulk in March. Around 145 economies are set to receive enough doses to immunize 3.3% of their collective population by mid-2021.
The European Union will announce it's doubling its contribution to the COVAX global COVID-19 vaccination program to €1 billion at a G7 meeting Friday, according to a European source. EU chiefs Ursula von der Leyen and Charles Michel are set to unveil the increased funding from the bloc's budget and pledge a further €100 million in aid to support the fight against the virus in Africa, according to the source. The move comes as world powers look to ramp up support for poorer nations in the face of accusations that rich countries are hoarding vaccines against the coronavirus and leaving other parts of the globe behind. U.S. President Joe Biden is set to pledge $4 billion in aid to the COVAX program during the virtual meeting with other leaders from the group of 7 major industrial nations.
The vulnerable groups by saying that.
Here in the Philippines, National Policy Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer and Vaccine Czar, Carlito Galvez Jr., called on the public to be patient amid some delays on vaccine arrival due to limited global supply and other variables. Galvez said various variables are affecting the procurement and the arrival of the jabs, including uneven distributions of vaccines globally, as well as geopolitics among countries. He also asked the local government units for more patience, particularly in Metro Manila. Let's listen in.
Pero nakita natin ngayon na talagang napakahirap ng sitwasyon in terms of yung tinatawag nating yung global supply and demand. Nakita natin na hindi lang tayo ang nahihirapan, kundi yung mga ibang mamamayan at ibang mga bansa sa ngayon. Bibigyan ko lang po kayo ng konting background na out of more than 880 or 200 na countries, meron pa po tayong 130 countries na hindi pa po nakakatanggap ng any vaccines. At 32 po doon ay nanganganib sa pandemyang ito, considering that they are one of the poorest of the poor. Nakikita natin yung China, nag-a-average na sila ng 1.7 million daily na vaccination, ganun din ng US. At nakita na natin kahit na yung Canada, na 6 times na lang binili yung vaccine. Ngayon, nahihirapan silang kumuha ng vaccine. At ang nagbigay pa sa kanila ng vaccine ay galing sa India, hindi galing sa US. Meaning nakikita natin yung geopolitics ng vaccination. Nakikita natin na talagang mayroong mga variables at saka realities. Ang Australia, hindi pa sila nagsisimula. Ang sabi nga nila, they will start their vaccination maybe by end of February. So yun po ang ina-advise ko sa ating mga kababayan na sana konting pasensya pa. At nakikita natin na ongoing pa rin po yung negotiation natin sa COVAX. And we are hopeful na yung COVAX, they will fulfill their commitment to bring us the 44 million doses dito sa first and second quarter, and also the third quarter and fourth quarter. They've been committed to give us more or less 5 million to 9 million AstraZeneca and Pfizer vaccines, and we are looking forward that they will look on this commitment.
Staying here in the Philippines, DTI Secretary Ramon Lopez said mayors are already studying guidelines for opening cinemas, such as wearing of face masks while watching a movie, sanitizing cinemas between shows, and having proper ventilation. Lopez said if the local government units are still not comfortable on the move to reopen cinemas, he asked them to allow the reopening gradually by starting at a maximum capacity of 20 to 30%. Let's listen in.
Ngayon meron na kaming draft na binigay sa mga mayors. So tinitingnan ho nila yan. Sa draft, naalala ko dito, tinignan ko rin ho yan. At by the way, ang nag-develop ng draft implementing protocol, DOH kasama na po dyan. So yung mga pangamba ho natin na magkakalat ang wag ko mag-alala dahil the experts ho have looked into this, yung technical working group. Hindi ko ho inimbento. Ito ho yung mga pagsuot pa rin ng mask habang nanonood. Yung pag-sanitize ng buong sinehan in between shows, yung pagbigay ng magandang ventilation, para yung air circulation ay may pumapasok, may lumalabas, hindi nakukulob dun sa sinehan. These are just some of the extra protocol that we are requiring sa mga cinemas. And nabanggit ko, yung mga cinemas na nasa MGCQ nga, nag-allow sila magbukas, walang nag-spike. In fact, pati rin yung mga nagbukas, by the way, 500 plus yung cinema sa MGCQ areas outside Metro Manila. In the end, may option silang hindi buksan yung 500 plus. 148 lang yung nagbukas based on actual numbers dun sa mga sinihan sa MGCQ. So mga 27% lang in the end ang nagbukas. Kasi nga depende rin talaga yan sa yung sa kalagayan doon sa kanya-kanyang lugar. So dito sa ating panukalang implementing guidelines, isa rin ito sa pag-uusapan ngayon, do we start with 20% muna? So yung mga i-considera natin.
Opo, sir.
Back to the U.S., life expectancy in the country fell by a whole year in the first half of 2020 as the pandemic started to grip the country, according to official figures on Thursday, U.S. time. Life expectancy at birth for the total U.S. population was 77.8 years, declining by a year from 78.8 in 2019, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Minorities were the hardest hit, with life expectancy decreasing 3 years for non-Hispanic blacks and nearly 2 years for the Hispanic population. Life expectancy at birth in the first half of last year was the lowest level since 2006, according to the report, though it said the figures were provisional as the U.S. continues to count the cost of the pandemic. It also said the figures don't reflect the entirety of the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 or other changes in causes of death, such as the increases in provisional drug overdose deaths. Minorities have suffered high COVID fatalities, partly due to employees who cannot work from home, larger households, and poorer access to health care, including testing. The country has so far registered 490,000 coronavirus deaths, by far the highest national death toll anywhere in the world.
Meanwhile, coronavirus deaths in Africa hit 100,000 yesterday, with 3,341,197 confirmed infections, according to an AFP tally compiled from official sources. The region has seen fewer deaths than Europe, Latin America, and North America, although South Africa has been hardest hit, accounting for nearly half of all deaths in Africa. The fatalities were registered in 54 countries since the virus first emerged in December 2019. The virus has caused at least 2,430,693 deaths around the world since the outbreak emerged in China. The United States is the worst affected country with 490,550 deaths, followed by Brazil with 242,090, Mexico with 177,061, India with 156,014, and Britain with 118,933.
In other news, 31 people have died in an outbreak of plague that erupted in northeastern DR Congo 3 months ago, according to health officials and experts today. It said we have more than 520 cases, of which more than 31 have been fatal, according to Patrick Karamura, the health minister in Ituri province, where the plague is endemic. He also said the cases are the bubonic form of the disease, except for 5 cases of pneumonic plague and 2 of septicemic plague. Anne Lodisot, an epidemiologist with a New York-based NGO called EcoHealth Alliance, and said the cases had surfaced between November 15 and December 13 in Biringi, in Ituri's Aru territory. The average age of patients was 13, but this varied between 3 months and 73 years, according to her. The World Health Organization issued an alert in July of a plague outbreak in Brethi, also in Ituri. Plague has persisted in the province since it was first confirmed there in 1926. A long-feared disease with biblical connotations, but treatable today with antibiotics. The plague is caused by a bacterium called Yersinia pestis. Lodisat, who is in the area with a team of researchers, said an early sign of the latest outbreak came with the mass death of rats. Germ-carrying fleas, which live in the rat's fur, then look for other hosts in proximity, which are humans. The bacterium is then transmitted through flea bites. The east of the Democratic Republic of Congo also struggles with episodic outbreaks of Ebola.
In other news, as New Zealand prepares to roll out Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccines, the vaccinators are given doses ahead of a larger program which will start vaccinating frontline workers on Saturday. The rest of the country will follow as more doses become available, but polls show up to 30% of Kiwis are still hesitant about getting the injections. New Zealand has been widely praised for its handling of the pandemic, registering 26 deaths in a population of 5 million. The vaccination program will be rolled out in Wellington on Monday and Christchurch on Wednesday. The Prime Minister said on Monday the government is expecting to vaccinate 12,000 border workers within 2 to 3 weeks. The next group to be vaccinated after border workers will be their household contacts. The Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines are the only approved vaccines in New Zealand.
In Brazil, the country with the second highest coronavirus death toll, passed the 10 million mark for reported infections amid a deadly second wave and problems with its vaccination campaign. The country became the third to reach the grim mark after the U.S. and India, with more than 51,900 new infections in 24 hours, according to official data. Over the same one-day period, 1,367 people died, bringing the total to 243,400. Brazil's figure of 10,030,626 came amid mounting criticism of how President Jair Bolsonaro's government has handled the epidemic and a vaccination response. So far, 3% of the population of 212 million have received 1 of 2 required vaccine doses. The month-old campaign with China's CoronaVac and the AstraZeneca shot has had to be stopped in several cities and towns, however, due to a shortage of doses, including in Rio de Janeiro.
Eagle News will be right back. Don't go away.
It is time to listen to the youth in a project developed by the Worldwide Fund for Nature Philippines called QC 2030. We will be talking about sustainability that impacts on society, environment, and economy.
Malaki ang parte na magiging maipi-play ng mga small business owners or entrepreneurs para mas ma-develop yung mga ideas na naumpisahan na ng mga kabataan.
Ito pong ginagawa po namin, hindi lang po ito para sa kinabukasan namin, kundi para sa fellow youth po namin at ng mga susunod pa pong generation.
Ms. Amy Belien, Project Manager, Worldwide Fund for Nature Philippines, and Ms. Ila Adige, our City 2030 Student Facilitator, will be joining us in this week's episode of Open for Business.
Britain's top court on Friday ruled that drivers at U.S. ride-hailing giant Uber are entitled to workers' rights in a judgment with huge implications for the gig economy. The Supreme Court's unanimous ruling that the drivers were workers followed a years-long legal battle with the Silicon Valley taxi and delivery company. Uber said it respected the ruling, which focused on a small number of drivers who used the Uber app in 2016. We are committed to doing more and will now consult with every active driver across the UK to understand the changes they want to see. Jamie Haywood, its manager for Northern and Eastern Europe, said in a statement. Lower courts ruled in 2016, 2017, and 2018 in favor of a group of 20 Uber drivers who argued they were entitled to employee status given the length of time they had been working through the Uber app and the way that the company oversaw their work. Uber insisted that the drivers were self-employed since they choose their own hours and place of work and often find passengers through rival apps. The complainants can now ask an employment tribunal for compensation, and it could trigger far-reaching changes affecting all ride-hailing drivers.
A leading Malaysian news site was fined $120,000 today after being convicted of contempt over readers' comments that criticized the judiciary, sparking international condemnation and concerns about worsening press freedom. Now, fears have grown that independent media outlets are under attack in the Southeast Asian nation since a scandal-plagued coalition seized power without an election last year following the collapse of a reformist government. Malaysia Kini, a popular portal that has made a name for itself by reporting on the misdeeds of the ruling elite, and its editor-in-chief, Stephen Gan, were accused of contempt of court in a case brought by the Attorney General. The case related to 5 readers' comments posted under an article that were critical of the judiciary, which authorities say eroded public confidence in the courts. A panel of judges at the country's top court ruled that Malaysia Kini was guilty and ordered the site to pay a $500,000 ringgit fine, more than double the amount sought by the prosecutors. Gan, who could have faced a jail term if convicted, was cleared, but he criticized the decision as uncalled for.
I'm terribly disappointed with what had happened, and I think, what crimes has Malaysia Kini committed that is so horrendous that we've been forced to pay a hefty fine. It will affect not just Malaysia Kini, it will have, the decision will place undue burden on media organization, and not just media organization, but tech companies and, millions of social media users. It has a chilling effect on freedom of expression in Malaysia. I think it creates a situation where we will have to look through the comments. It's not just.
Singapore yesterday launched what it billed as a coronavirus secure hotel and meeting complex where visitors communicate via intercom through glass panels as the Asian financial hub slowly opens up to the world for business. Watch this.
Then the benefit they have of this facility is they don't have to serve the additional quarantine time in Singapore. After the initial short waiting period at the facility to wait for the results of their on-arrival test, they are able to get to business immediately. So there is, in that respect, a significant saving in time on their respect. Keith has already pointed out that what was very self-evident to us, the economy was hurting, the aviation industry was hurting, the food and beverage and hospitality industry was hurting. We needed to find a way to kickstart the economy.
But to come here for the meetings, you have to adhere to the requirements, which is you cannot leave the facility on your own once you've entered. And this is down to things like the doors are one-way. So if you come from the land side, the doors are two-way. You come from the air side. Once you enter the facility, you cannot leave until someone lets you out. You have to stay within the facility.
Short-stay business travelers to Singapore will be able to avoid the official 14-day quarantine rule if they stay at Connect at Changi, a purpose-built facility near Changi Airport. They will, however, be required to remain within the facility for the duration of their stay to prevent possible transmission to the wider community. After keeping its borders mostly closed for months, Singapore, which is home to the Asian headquarters of many international firms, will soon allow it in business travelers from anywhere in the world as part of efforts to recover from a pandemic-induced downturn. The city-state suffered its worst-ever recession last year as global travel ground to a halt, with international visitor arrivals plunging to a mere 2.7 million from 19.1 million in 2019. Upon arrival at the airport, guests will be bubble wrapped, meaning they are tested and then ferried directly to the facility. The complex will initially have 150 guest rooms, which will later be expanded to 660, each with a shelf outside where staff can leave meals without coming into contact with the guests.
After 7 months in space, NASA's Perseverance rover overcame a tense landing phase with a series of perfectly executed maneuvers to gently float down to the Martian soil and embark on its mission to search for signs of microbial life. Let's take a look.
We are 1 minute. Perseverance is now slowed to subsonic speeds, and the heat shield has been separated. This allows both the radar and the cameras to get their first look at the surface. Current velocity is about 75 meters per second. Touchdown confirmed. Yes. Perseverance safely on the surface of Mars, ready to begin seeking the signs of past life.
Just a credit to the team. I mean, just what an amazing team to work through all the adversity that goes and all the challenges that go with landing a rover on Mars, plus the challenges of COVID and just an amazing accomplishment. This mission also has technology on it. One of the cool things is the Ingenuity helicopter. It's an experiment on this mission, but if it's successful, we can use it as an science observation platform by putting instruments on it, and also use it as a scout for future rover missions.
This is super exciting. Now, we have been working on Mars helicopter for over 6 years, testing and carefully designing it for operation at Mars. So what's going through my mind? Ingenuity Mars helicopter is finally at the destination that it is designed for.
Put the first image from Perseverance on the surface of Mars. Now it comes from the engineering camera. We just got our second image in. Our second image is in.
Okay, these we have a camera in the front and rear of the spacecraft. They're near the ground, so these are pretty close. So you can see the wheels there, and they're a little dirty because we've got glass covers over these cameras. But we took these seconds after landing, so there's still dust in the air from our landing event.
Now, before it could embark on its lofty quest, it first had to overcome the dreaded 7 minutes of terror, the risky landing procedure that has scuppered nearly 50% of all missions to the planet. Shortly after 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, the Mars 2020 spacecraft careened into the Martian atmosphere at 12,500 miles per hour, protected by its heat shield, and it then deployed a supersonic parachute the size of a little league field before firing up an 8-engine jetpack to slow its descent even further and then eventually lower the rover carefully to the ground on a set of cables. Its target site was absolutely treacherous for landing, according to Alan Chen, the lead engineer for landing stage. But the vessel had new landing technologies up its sleeves to help it navigate during descent, including the terrain relative navigation that uses a special camera, as you can see here, to identify surface features and compare them to an onboard map.
And of course, the internet delivered with memes. Those are actually really fun to watch. Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. See you again tomorrow.
Maybe we should show that. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.